I like to do that here on my channel. Like I do impressions at the end of my show. A couple weeks ago, I was reading the lyrics of WAP in a Noam Chomsky voice. You know what I mean? Just like fuck around and have fun, because it doesn't seem like any goddamn fun at all.
Right.
When it, like you said, it's not just hall monitor stuff. It's also, it seems like the people like are ready to put a scarlet letter on you. You know what I mean? Like I have a friend who, a couple like anecdotes. I have one friend who he's like, he went libertarian for a while, and then he came to his senses a little bit, and then he just calls himself a centrist, and he's just terrified. He's like terrified of everybody. He will not go on Twitter. He's literally just, I say Twitter and I see his shoulders come up and like his blood pressure like spikes, and he's just like, I can't, because of
Yeah.
just this perception of it. And then the other thing is, and I very much on my channel, I talk about my wife like I'm Columbo, my wife always says, and I just kind of like talk about her that way. But like, she has my politics,
Yeah.
she might not be full on like, oh, I'm a socialist, or she doesn't. She's like, I got to go to work. She doesn't have the time for that.
Right.
And then when I'm trying to explain to her, I'm like, oh, I'm so worked up about it. She's like, what are you so mad? Why are you worked up about? Oh, you got to understand whatever, force the vote, whatever it could be. And she'll just say, this shit sounds stupid. Like, it just sounds really dumb and pointless. But also about some of the, frankly, the hyper woke stuff. And I'm not, and I don't mean that pejoratively. I mean, I know it's a charged word, and I don't want to,
I do want to just interject one thing about that, because I think this is like a revealing thing, because what you just did when you were like, look, I'm not, like you're sort of backing up mid sentence,
yeah.
I've done that, right? Like you can
Yep.
probably find me doing that on YouTube a bunch of times, because if you've been sort of trained, if you've been trained well enough to know how those sorts of comments get read and interpreted in intra-left context, you start doing that, right? You just start being like, look, I'm not saying, right, which, and
it's like shock therapy. Oh, but it's funny because my wife, she's first generation Mexican American, and like I'll tell her about some of like the odd like minutia going on in, or I don't know, like the term Latinx, right? And she'll just be like, like this stuff, like
she's not in the 0.01% of Latinx people who like the term Latinx.
Yeah, and it's just like, to speak Spanish, you have to speak. I'm taking classes on it. You have to speak in a gendered way. Certain words are feminine, certain words are masculine, and all that stuff.
All the languages to take a run at degendering, that might not be the one to start with, but
yeah, and like I have nothing but respect for non-binary, transgendered people. Trans rights are human rights. I mean, you could say all the things, and that's what I believe and how I feel. But like you said, building a mass movement through solidarity. I mean, you can have that with trans people, but at the same time, I think that's how Natalie ContraPoints got in trouble in a way, was discussing that very thing. And I appreciated your interview with her about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, actually, the two times that Natalie got, well, I'm sure they're not the only two times Natalie got in trouble, but the two times I talk about, that she was the subject of a lot of pile-ons, and and people trying to get other people to distance themselves from her. And during the second one of these, I joined her Patreon and posted about it as a gesture of solidarity, and like I got there like, Ben, this is not a good time to be publicly supporting this person.
No.
And so one of those times was she was tweeting about the custom, the sort of ritual that you sometimes get in like lefty, political meetings now, of everybody going around and saying their pronouns at the beginning. And she wasn't even saying that like this is a terrible thing and nobody should ever do it and nobody has any reason for like liking this. What she was saying, and I've got to say, like, it's a small point, but like, man, like Twitter is not a medium that lends itself to spending like a day thinking about it before you press send. It's a medium that lends itself to having the thought flits through your head. You're like, oh, that would be a tweet. And then it's like, oh, crap, you know.
Yeah, what have I done?
So yeah, Natalie Wynn, she talked about this ritual that people do where they say their pronouns. She had not, and which I think some people, especially non-binary or non-passing trans people, have reasons to like that, right? Which I think she acknowledges. But she said, "Look, my experience is different, and I'm not wild about it. I don't like it because."
And she's usually obviously the only non-cis person in a room.
Exactly. So like she says, like, look, I'm in a what's going on here? I can go to a sports bar in North Carolina and be missed and mammed all night with no problem and no issue. And I'm not like called attention to in any way. But then like I go to like a lefty meeting and it's obviously like 20 cis people and me, she says, and everybody's going around saying their pronouns, and she can kind of feel everybody like, like turning, because she's the only trans person there. It's like, yeah, it makes her feel a little uncomfortable. She's not crazy about it. That was the tweet, which was like a pretty innocuous tweet. She didn't say nobody should ever do this again. She didn't. I mean, whatever. By the way, I said earlier I don't have detailed tactical advice on this particular issue. I do have some detailed tactical advice. You want it?
Okay.
Okay. I think that there are people who have good reasons to want their pronouns to be out there and like we just talked about. I think there are other people who, for the reason Natalie mentioned, or for various other reasons, maybe they're like trying to figure out what they think. Like maybe they're struggling with their own identity. That like especially we were talking about very young people. Who knows, right? You might have various people who, for various reasons, aren't comfortable with it. Skip the recitation. Just give everybody name tags. And if they want to write their pronouns on the name tag, they can. If they don't, they won't. And that's that, right? Like that seems like a very clean solution to me. That's my one piece of specific, detailed tactical advice for the night. Don't make people at meetings go around saying it. Just give them a name tag. But anyway,
Zoom thing has made that a thing where everybody now on Zoom will just put it next to their name. So it's an easy way, but even then, you still go around in the Zoom meeting and still do it.
Which I don't understand, because if it's right there in the corner of the screen, right, like that seems like that's redundant. But whatever. So people got furious about her about this, and then like that died down. She was like off Twitter for a while because of all the pushback she'd gotten on that.
People went nuclear though. They went like,
no, they really did, right? Like which is nuts, because this is a person who is like one of the most effective left communicators on, probably the most effective left political communicator on YouTube, just in terms of sheer numbers of people reached. And
a league of her own.
Exactly, right? So, like it should take a lot. Like honestly, I think that like what it should actually take to get you to like disown and denounce Natalie Wynn, like the bar should be set pretty high, but and somehow it's set at like nothing. But like so like people went nuclear about that. When that had finally died down, there was a second thing where basically she did a video where she gave about 3 seconds of voice work to Buck Angel. He was reading a quote from John Waters, and Buck Angel is somebody who is a trans icon of previous generations, somebody that Natalie had admired for long before she knew him, was a very visible trans person in a world when there were not really visible trans people, very, very, very few, and then like Buck Angel has is what's known as a trans medicalist, that he thinks that you're only like really trans if you have diagnosed dysphoria and you're seeking medical transition. Lots of trans people who don't fall into that, don't like that for obvious reasons. But Natalie never said she agreed with that position. In fact, she said many times explicitly during this controversy that she disagreed with it.
Mhm.
She was very on record about this. She had long before this controversy, she'd done multiple videos like arguing that yes, non-binary or gender identities are a real thing and you should take them seriously.
Yep.
Uh, but her big crime here was that she had given him a few seconds of voice work, and that even though she was willing to state her disagreement with him, she wasn't willing to go the extra step to like excommunicating him and shunning him.
Yeah.
And then that was like enough to trigger this like really like this almost unbelievable firestorm of hatred towards her, and people saying she's a bigot, she should be deplatformed, trying to pressure other people, other media figures to not have anything to do with her,
Mhm.
and all of which, by the way, I mean, just to kind of zoom out and put this into perspective, like all of the people who were furious at her about this, what they like, I mean, they actually didn't disagree with her about the substance of any of this stuff, right?
Mhm.
And
It
even
was like
what,
a guilt by association,
yeah, it's
essentially.
pure guilt by association, and it's also like just like okay, we live in a country where I don't know the numbers, but it's like we've got like half the population that has really really bad views on stuff like this.
Yeah. Oh,
Uh,
yeah. Certain states, and like to bring it back to comedians,
yeah,
Chappelle made that joke, like, be
yeah,
quiet. You can't even get a bathroom in this for the next 3 states or
yeah,
whatever,
yeah,
like,
yeah. That's right. Yeah, on
ugh,
sticks and stones. Yeah, exactly. But it seems like well, if your goal is to reach out, is to convince as many people as possible to have better positions on this stuff. This is pretty counterproductive behavior. And what I was going to say earlier, when you were doing the "look, I'm not saying" thing,
yeah,
is I totally understand why you're doing that. I've done that, many
yeah.
times. Sure. But like
But
also like it's really worth like zooming out to the view from 10,000 feet here. Just say like it's really really unhelpful that we've got an atmosphere on the left where you have to do that
yeah,
because there's a lot of like the stuff, a lot of things, and we got to make some distinctions between just like being a bigot, right, which is bad and you shouldn't, uh,
hmm,
and 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 then like not liking particular sorts of basically like one wing of the culture war and particular kinds of language policing that go with that, particular kinds of sort of searching out wrong thinking that go with that. Like because if by and I know these are all flexible terms that are used by many different people to mean many different things, right? But
hmm,
to the extent that you mean the second thing when
hmm,
you talk about wokeness,
yeah,
like that kind of identitarian politics, most people, most people's material interests should align with us. Most people of all races, most people of all sexualities, all that stuff. Most people actively hate that stuff when they come into contact with it,
yeah,
and fair enough. I mean, there's no reason they shouldn't. And I think that it's like I think that very often when we're just swimming in this stuff, it's really easy to lose sight of just how alienating all of that can be. I mean, like you get just to pick like like when you have like 450 former Jeopardy contestants will sign an open letter denouncing a current winner because he made a gesture with his fingers that like he won 3 times. That if you have like a advanced enough stage of online brain poisoning, you think is a white
ugh.
supremacist thing. Like,
Well, there was a guy, like a PG&E employee, who was driving home cracking his knuckles, and somebody got a photo of him, and they're like, it's the white power sign, But at the same time, you do have white supremacists throwing up the sign very clearly,
oh no,
knowing what they're doing. So,
well, of
but
course,
that was their whole point, was
because at
to,
this point they're messing with us. Like they
yeah,
know
they're poisoning the well, they're shitting in the, they're muddying the water.
because it was originally a prank. it's like, oh, I'll bet we could get like a certain kind of like identitarian lib to like believe that this is like the okayest white
Exactly.
supremacist thing,
Exactly. Exactly.
which is obviously just nonsense. It was a joke. But then, of course, obviously, once that got widespread, the actual white supremacists started doing it because it's like, right, we
Yeah.
can,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know,
It's
now
so
we can really mess with them because, like, who knows, like, and it's, but like, also, like, really, if you see somebody doing that, there is like a 99.99999% chance
they have
that
no idea what you're
they have
talking about.
no idea of that
Yeah.
association because
Exactly.
like you have to be really into this stuff to have to have heard of it. And I think that like when you get this sort of sense that you have these when you have constantly shifting standards, based that are like pretty fickle, that and you're willing to like really like angrily police, who's doing what, and come down hard on people, like most. I'm just going to say the same thing, and one more time, just for once more with feeling like it's relatively rare, right? That somebody isn't like bothered by that. Like if you're not if you're
Yeah.
not an especially political person, which most people are not, like most people, like we're weird, right? We're
Yeah.
strange because we spend all
Yep.
of our time thinking about this stuff. Uh,
Yes.
and but the much more normal thing is for people to, they don't, it's not that like they never think about politics. They do a little bit, they have
Mhm.
issues come onto their radar. They have political, impulses. They have political reactions to things, but they're a little all over the place because they don't like obsessively think about it like all of us do. Uh,
Mhm. Mhm.
and
Mhm.
and if you're in that category, more than likely your reaction to your reaction to seeing people, be like have their career destroyed because 10 years ago, they, like you tweeted something that was like a little bit of an edgy joke, but not that bad 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Like most people's reaction to that is going to be, oh, gross. I want nothing to do with that.
Yeah. 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 And I think we can do a little intellectual triage and kind of understand, like,
Yeah.
like there are certain people who are going to weather that storm. Like
Right.
Natalie can weather the storm. She's got enough Patreon followers and all that stuff. But like and when you have this pathology of powerlessness, as you've talked about, like that, and you said you're so used to not having power. I do have power within my local leftist group, my local community. I've seen it here locally, where I know people who are long time, in this conservative town, the longtime left wing people who everybody knows, like, oh, that, they were at all the protests back when I was young and protesting the war, and they were at the pride, the against Prop 8 when they're trying to ban gay marriage. They've been there consistently, and now in this latest iteration, it's like, hey, like you're being a white savior right now, like shut up and sit in the back, and they're just like, what happened, like they feel totally alienated by this stuff, and it's like, I'm sorry. I'm reminded of Cornel West, when asked about Bernie Sanders. He said, "Brother Bernie doesn't know all the buzzwords," and it's like they don't know the lingo that's coming out of whatever college or group right now, and people totally, I believe, in a lot of cases overreact, and I mean, public shaming, like, it's an effective tool for like hunter gatherers in loose bands of like 50 to 150 Dunbar's number. But if like you're trying to mobilize within a society, a political movement, it doesn't make any sense at all. And I've even heard that kind of naturalistic argument, like, hey, hunter gatherers do shaming when somebody's not acting right and hoarding food, and it's like, okay, but this ain't that right now. You know what I
No,
mean?
no, it's not. I should also say there's like a kind of argument that people often give that's like, oh, look, every society has norms, and that like there are always going to be taboos. There's always going to be some sort of like informal social enforcement, of taboos. So what are you talking about, right? Like this is just universal stuff. And I'm sure to some extent that's true, right? I mean, there are always there are always lines that people will be pissed off if you cross in any context. But I think that to my mind, that's not really the issue, because really, what we're talking about here, well, one thing we're talking about here is kind of hair trigger mass shaming, which I think is a lot different than just like, if you do things, I don't know, you live in a small town and you do things that offend people, and they sort of give you the side eye, and don't want to don't want to have much, like don't stop inviting you to things, right? Like that
Yeah.
seems pretty different to me from having like 10,000 people screaming at you that you're a fascist and you should die. Uh,
Yeah.